And we're live. Good evening and welcome to UK Crime Book Club. And welcome to Emma, who's joining us this evening, Emma Curtis, and her book, The Commuter, is out today. I'm going to go that way a bit more. So happy publication day, Emma. Yes.
Thank you very much. I really am having such a nice day, and this is the icing on the cake.
Fantastic. Yeah, so you've had we were just talking before we came on, and you were saying that you'd had a really great day, publication out with your agent and with your publisher. So that's a really lovely day to we'll come on to sort of events and things later. So would you like to introduce yourself and the book?
Okay, my name's Emma Curtis. I've written, I sort of lose count because I've just finished a new one. I think that's book 8, and this is the 7th of mine. I've been writing for a long time, very long time. I've been published for quite a short time. So I was in the wilderness for probably about 15 years, just banging stuff off to agents and getting rejections. And then it's suddenly come the door. I got an agent and the doors open and suddenly your life changed. It's been really lovely. I've had a brilliant 5th decade, actually. So The Commuter's come out today, and it's a kind of, it's a did she or didn't she kind of book with unreliable narratives. So a woman is accused of killing her controlling husband with the help of a fellow commuter who she unfortunately doesn't remember ever seeing because she's in an accident at the same time as her husband dies. So it's about that. She's got to prove her innocence. And in the meantime, she's a very wealthy widow who people either want dead or in prison. That about sums it up.
Yeah, I think it does sum it up. She's Rachel. She doesn't have a great deal of luck, does she? She's surrounded by not very nice people. I sort of said in my sort of she's got the nightmare stepdaughter who really is a nightmare, Caroline. And we sort of don't want to give spoilers, but I think we can sort of talk about talk about them a bit to give a bit of a flavour of them, can't we?
Yes, they are. Caroline's horrible.
Yeah. What was the sort of inspiration for The Commuter?
Well, funny enough, it was the rush hour cross-check. If anybody travels in London, there's a free sheet called the Metro, or Metro, hasn't got a the apparently, but they have a section where you can send a little email saying I was the guy in the black beanie and the white shirt and you smiled at me on, I don't know, Westminster Station. Can we meet for a coffee? It's all those, and they're really sweet. I'm quite obsessed with them. And I was wondering if anybody ever gets back, if they ever work out. They never say there's, a wedding ever transpires out of any of these things. But they're lovely, and they're all sorts of people do it. It seems to be. Anyway, I assumed there were romances written about this. I think there probably are, but I just wondered whether I could write a psychological suspense involving that as a kind of meet cute, but not so cute. So that's the inspiration, and it was then figuring out a story I could wrap around that and enjoy writing. Really, that's the main thing.
Because I mean, it's very fast paced, isn't it? And you sort of get to know the characters quite quickly. Although some of them, because it's written over 2 timelines, isn't it? You've got a present and a past. So you've got what's happening to Rachel now, and what you've got what's happening to Rachel sort of in the past.
Yes, it's not too far past. It's like between 6 weeks and 2 months, I think.
Yeah. And she really does sort of come up again. She really does sort of, she starts off with a controlling, abusive husband, and a stepdaughter who literally wants rid of her one way or another. And she just seems to be really. What was sort of the inspiration for her? Because I sort of found her quite fascinating. I liked her.
Yeah,
I liked her.
Yeah, it's different. It's odd in psychological suspenses. Everybody comes off badly. People tend not to like the characters. So you have to find a balance between having an engagement character is also problematical, because there's nothing with those suspense. There's no kind of black and white good. Even the baddies have different facets. I mean, the husband who's controlling now, he's he was lovely. He's just a lot older than her, and things are starting to fall apart. And he was a powerful man, but he isn't anymore. So he's beginning to behave problematically because of that. But
Yeah.
neither is she perfect. But you still, you still got to keep readers rooting for your heroine or hero, heroine in this instance, even if they don't always behave very well. And she doesn't always. I think she's essentially, we all think in our own stories that we are good people trying to do the right thing, even getting it. But essentially we think we're good people. I think it's that with those characters. Nobody's just evil.
No, and I think in her situation, it would be very difficult to know. Well, I mean, she does trust people, but you sort of, as the reader, you sort of you question sometimes her trusting, but then other times you don't, which I can't say much more than that about. It's quite difficult to talk about without, I don't want to give any spoilers, but I was sort of interested in sort of Caroline. Was she sort of, did she come sort of fully formed as the sort of the evil stepdaughter, or did she sort of evolve as you wrote?
She kind of came fully formed. I wanted some. There has to be a reason why sort of young people in their mid-20s don't leave when they could leave. I know some now. My children boomeranged home like crazy.
Mine too.
But it wasn't financial for her because it was a wealthy father who would have helped her. It's just she had dug her heels in and didn't want to go because she this woman, younger woman, I think 25 years younger woman that her father had married. Very, very jealous girl. Daddy issues.
Yeah, big daddy issues.
Big daddy issues, yeah.
And Daddy's always sort of bailed her out, hasn't he? Daddy's always been there to sort of...
Always bailing her out. Yeah, so when that doesn't, when she takes, Rachel calls them up on that, that's when things kind of kick off. Daddy guilt.
Yeah. And I think she's a really interesting character. I really like the sort of psychology behind her, because like I say, she's got the daddy guilt things, but she's really very, what's the word? Unkind, unlikable.
Yeah, I don't think a bit vulnerable because she wants to be an actress and she's never going to make it, and that hurts. That hurts. It's very personal.
I think, I think she is she's a very complex character, as are, like you say, Anthony. Him and Rachel have had, a good marriage up until this point. And then everything. Sorry.
She did pinch him off the wife, but yeah, they have had a good marriage. It's just at some stage the difference in their age gap has started to strain, especially when she's doing really well at work and enjoying herself, and the board of directors has tried to oust him, and he's had a heart attack, and he's weakening. And I think powerful men, battle against that sometimes in the wrong way, by squidging people who are more vulnerable than them.
Yeah. No, I think it's I'm just looking at the feed, and I can see that I'm popping in and out, which is really weird because I can't see that, but I can see it on Facebook that I'm popping in and out.
It's not too bad. It's bad earlier. Maybe you've got bad connection at the moment.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. Sorry if anybody's bothered by it. But we'll try and carry on. But live is sometimes like this. So so we don't, as we said, we don't want to give sort of spoilers out. But we sort of said it's it's fast paced, it's complex. Was it difficult to write? Sort of how did you sort of put it together? Because you've got the sort of the past and the present, like you say, not massively past and present, but it's enough. There's quite a big sort of turn in the book, isn't there? I think that's fair to say. There's a point in the book where you go in one direction and then you go in a different direction, and then Rachel. So what sort of, how did that come about?
I do make life really difficult for myself sometimes. And it gets very I have a whiteboard, and I do one line or a couple of lines for each chapter and cut them out, and I have lots of nice colourful magnets. I stick them up on the whiteboard, and then I start moving them around. And the moment you move one, you create a kind of knock-on effect on the other. So I'll get it done, realise that somebody knows something in the wrong, it is so complicated to do. And it's very satisfying once everything falls into place, but you have to keep going over it and over it and over it to check you haven't missed a thread or given away something because you've moved a chapter. You get there in the end. It's also frustrating for editors.
Yeah.
So the book I'm writing at the moment is much more linear, giving myself an easier time. But I like complicated plots. I love old books like Lady Audley's Secret are really, really plotty. I just enjoy doing that. I enjoy the kind of the brain exercise, which I think is also very good for me. It'll stave off dementia. But you know what I mean? It does really.
Yeah, it sort of challenges you.
Yeah, and then along the way, because you're doing this and you're reweaving and you're doing that, you're getting to know the characters, and you have these moments of epiphany. You suddenly, so things fall into place that you never expected to need to fall into place. So it's a sort of snakes and ladders type thing that works in the end. You just have to. It is really hard work.
Yeah. Do you find it?
Yeah.
Do you find that the characters sort of change in that process sometimes? That they decide they want to do something different, or
yes, quite a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you have to. I mean, my main thing when I go through it again and again is to check that every single thing anybody does is motivated. Because sometimes it's tempting to put in a bit of drama or have somebody say something because that sounds great, but the motivation isn't there. So as you do that, you're working on everybody's motivation, and that's very much to do with their character. And I like to make sure I'm really hard on myself with that. I don't leave anything in that is weakly motivated. And then you develop your characters.
Yeah. So did you sort of with the sort of clues and things, is that something that you do as you go along and then you sort of edit them in and out as you go along, or do you So you said with this book it's much more linear, so with that one you're sort of doing it as you go along sort of thing?
Yes, you do. But you do feed in things in the editing process. I've done it. I've just sent it to my agent, sending it to the editor, and it's inevitable that my editor will come back with something that completely turns something that's absolutely vital. Will pull something out they don't like, and that means you've got to go through and do a load of that. That's the thing you worry about when your edits come back. Is the tiny little thing they say, usually one sentence. If you could just do just a little thing. It's 3 months of work. This tiny little, it'll be just take out chapter. There's one book. It was one little mistake. So could you move what happens in chapter 8 to chapter 40, sort of right from the other end of the book, which meant completely redoing absolute. And it was just one little. Do you mind? It won't take you a minute.
It won't take a minute. Just 4 or 5 days, weeks.
Yeah. But that's what they're good at. You have to. That's the trust thing. You trust your editor, and don't trust your editor. You shouldn't.
No, and I guess that when you've sort of invested that many hours in writing, in your work, then you have to have that trust, because otherwise, if you were like, well, I don't want to change it, that doesn't
last long like that.
No.
Usually you think it for a few hours, and then it slowly kind of filters down. You kind of grudgingly accept the right. By the next day, you're quite excited about digging in and getting in. So it's just a matter of managing your reactions and responses to things. You don't knee jerk with an email back saying, "I like you."
Yeah. Well, I guess you just have to learn to be not precious about it, which is difficult, isn't it? When it's your work. Is that something that gets easier, do you think?
I mean, I've never been. I think the main thing is you're writing a book.
Oh, we've just seemed to have lost Emma a second. I'm just going to see whether she's Hello, that's okay. No, you just disappeared.
Yeah, and then I reloaded. So hopefully we'll
yeah.
get there.
That's fine. You'll appear in a second. I've just put a note in the chat to say we're having a few tech issues.
Yeah,
so
can you see me now?
yeah, I can see you now. So
all right, I can't remember where I was, but
you said I think you said when you started a book. I can't remember where we were exactly, but we were talking about editing, weren't we? And
yeah.
We'll come back to it if we remember.
Fresh questions.
Yeah, we'll come back to it when we remember in a second. So this is your, I think I counted in the front of your book that this is your 7th book. I don't know if that is right. That's why how many?
Well, it's sort of 7.5 because the first book I had published was under my real name and completely flat-lined. So I don't count it. I had a 2-book contract, so they had to let me write another one. Yes, so it's sort of 8, but actually 7.
So yeah, so does it sort of get easier or harder to come up with the ideas and the plots as you've gone along?
I don't know. Sometimes it's. I think ideas are really easy. It's just you get an idea and then you've got to put it to the test, to the stress test, so it can actually turn it into because you can get a really good, sexy premise that will sell like mad, but actually you start thinking about whether it will actually get your 300 pages or whatever, and it won't.
Yeah.
So I just write a sentence. I've got a story ideas file that's got masses of really ideas that sounded great in the middle of the night, but not when you put them. So I'm working on an idea now, and I really like it, but I'm not sure that it's going to go. I'm not sure it's believable enough, and that seems to be. I think one of the things with psychological suspense is because they're about kind of you and me. They have to be. I mean, I like the whole prisoner in a dungeon kind of situation.
Yeah.
But unless you live in America where it's really believable, or Austria maybe, it doesn't work in England so well. I think because we're such a and the other thing about England that America is we don't really drive saloon cars with those lovely convenient boots. That not
convenient
really
for their bodies.
You hide the body. You don't really see them, but maybe some businessmen. But that's a real, that's a handicap.
Yeah, I suppose I never really thought about it like that. They always laugh at me at work because I'm always thinking about, like, I always say, oh, that would make a good murder, or that wouldn't make a good murder. Or...
You're lying if you think a good one.
But yeah, I hadn't actually thought about, like, because I guess like most cars have like windows all around, so you'd have to like hide them under a blanket or something, and then
it's really annoying. It's like front door cameras now. That's really irritating.
I guess that's the thing with writing contemporary crime as well, is that you have to add all these things in that, like, I imagine Dame Agatha didn't have that problem back in the day. She didn't have to worry about Ring doorbells and and the internet.
And nobody would know. I mean, just so that there's a lot to think about from the tech point of view. You can't just say they've forgotten their phone or they switch their phone off all the time. It just doesn't wash these days.
No, I mean, I guess you can have this, like, you can have the sort of snowstorm perhaps, but you can't have one of those all year round, and you're cut off like on an island, but there is only so many sort of that locked room sort of.
No, you have to work with the tech really, otherwise it's you can't beat and join them thing. Otherwise people just don't, because that's the way people are growing up now. That's part of their part of their body, the phone. So they can't contemplate actually going anywhere. Why would you? It's like going out without your hand. So yes, so you have to just figure it out.
Has it the sort of you sound like you're a plotter. Are you a sort of a big plotter? You've got the whiteboard, so
But my plots seem they become more and more complicated as I write. They start out as quite simple, and then I complicate and complicate. Not always deliberately. But yeah, I like a plot. I like to read a plotty book.
Yeah, and I guess that's sort of, if you're used to that and you're sort of come along, you've always done that with your writing. Because I thought that the interesting, so I was going to come back to sort of ask you about what was the most challenging thing about writing the book, and I wondered whether sort of the amnesia features in the book. I won't say any more than that, but was that something that you have researched at all, or was that something that you thought straight from the beginning that was going to feature in it?
No, I wanted that. I mean, everything you write, you type it into Google saying, "Can this happen?" and you cross it, it will say yes. And quite often it does. And then once you've got that and you put it in, you then find somebody you can actually ask. You know, you'll find somebody you meet at a party will know somebody who's a brain surgeon or what. It's uncanny how quickly you can find somebody who will actually sit down and tell you. But yes, in the first instance, Google, you phrase your questions in the hope of the way you phrasing will get you the answer that you require for your book. But you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
There's always somebody out there who knows more.
Yeah, I've quite a lot of people have said that in the past, where, you know, there's always going to be somebody who says, you know, actually somebody was saying it the other day. They were talking about a Richard Osman book, and they were saying that there wasn't, I can't remember, it was something about there wasn't a Waitrose in this place or something. And he'd put it in the thing, and we're like, well, I don't know, there is a Waitrose in there. But you know, it's just people will pick up, and even though it's fiction, it doesn't matter whether there is or there isn't. But if you make it about a real thing or a real place, that people will sort of pick up on that, won't you? So is that why you want to make it as realistic as possible?
Yeah, I think so. The one I'm writing at the moment, I've completely made up the place. I mean, normally I find a part of London that I want to explore, or I know somebody. The next one's going to be where my daughter moved to. But I wanted to have what I wanted, which was a heath and a river nearby and all this sort of thing. I couldn't find that, so I just made it up completely.
Yeah.
Some authors always make it up. A lot of authors have a real place. I quite often read ones from around where I live, West London, Southwest London.
Yeah.
Where you get clusters of authors, and they all write about the Peddington authors and the Richmond authors and the Crouch End authors.
Do you think that gives you more freedom, like making it, you know, when you compare the two, when you write about a real place or a fictional place? Do you think it gives you more freedom to, you know, to do what you want?
It's another form of world building, isn't it? You have to stick to the rules you've made and not just conveniently make up something else. But I like walking around. I've always loved walking around London and looking at the houses, and I prefer the streets to the countryside, really. So I pick a place. I did one in North London area. Really enjoyed just wandering around. And then there's Rightmove, find the perfect house for your characters.
Yeah, that's quite, I imagine that's sort of quite useful. That, you know, otherwise years ago you would have had to have gone to an estate agent's and got all the pieces of paper, whereas now you can just go and have a good old nose around people's houses.
Have a conversation. So I did have a friendly estate agent to help me on the one I'm writing at the moment. That was nice. There's always somebody I want to talk to.
So do you find that you've sort of made that sort of collection of people as you've gone through the books, that you've sort of, you know, spoken to different people, and although it sort of goes into the book, but obviously it's sort of, you know, has that sort of led you in the direction, you know, if you thought, well, actually I've spoken to this person and they've told me that, so actually I could do this next time?
Yeah, I've had to completely change things because of what people have told me, but that's okay. You know, I'd rather get it right, even if it doesn't suit my plot, which is irritating. One thing I was asking the estate agent, ethically, there's absolutely no way we would do that. Back to the drawing board.
But then I guess with crime as well, you've got that license, haven't you, of, you know, that people will do things that they're not ethically, or they're not, you know, they're not going to do that. But I guess it's how they would do it and get away with it. You know, that's the difference.
Yes, it's what you can get away. It's always what you can get away with.
Yeah, definitely. Sort of who inspired you to write? You know, do you write full time now? Is it something that you've always wanted to do?
I do write full time now. I worked until my early 50s, and then I started writing full time. But I started writing when my when I had babies and was at home with them. So I was inspired by Jilly Cooper, actually. Love Jilly Cooper.
She's good to be inspired by.
But that was back in the early 90s. I was doing that, and because I didn't have it, was it was difficult fitting it in. I thought I'd try Mills and Boon because I thought they're nice short and they'd be easy. So I wrote a lot of those and got a lot of those thumping back through. Send the whole manuscript back. I must have tried about 8 times. I think they got bored of me, so I gave up after a while and went back to work. And the children were a bit bigger. And then when my oldest one went to university, I just thought I've got to do something. So I was enjoying my job as a school secretary, but it wasn't really particularly. It was fun, but it wasn't particularly fulfilling. I didn't feel like I'd had a career, so I just started writing again. I think that was my third book, third attempt that got me an agent. So that took about 4 years. So you have to keep. If you're writing on spec for a long time, you really have to kind of keep your spirits up.
Yeah.
And inspiration does come, and it's partly because there's a sort of lottery aspect to it. Every time you send out an MS or submit to an agent or whatever, you have a chance, and it's a lot better odds than the odds are something like 1 in 2,000 rather than 1 in 600 million for whatever it is for the lottery.
So that's a bit better.
It is inspiring that they're kind of sending it out, and then the bit of hope you get, and then it comes back and you're miserable, and then you pick yourself up and brush yourself off and try again. But I was writing short stories and getting those, sending those out to competitions, and those were the one things that were doing well. So that kind of kept me going. If anybody, the problem is having absolutely no credentials as a writer, because there's a lot of people who come through the MA courses now, a lot of people who come through journalism, that kind of thing. But if you're coming through back before the internet, if you're coming through absolutely got no connection with the business at all, it's really hard submitting to agents. So the short stories were very good, because I could say, I've had something that
you've had these published, or I think that's
and then slowly,
isn't it now?
Yeah, but it was by the time I was beginning to get somewhere, the Twitter was up and running, and got on that, and I was starting to connect. But it's very hard, actually, if you don't know. It's hard for everybody, but certainly hard before the internet, because networking seems to be a big part of things now.
Yeah, and it's quite an isolating role, isn't it? I know a lot of authors say, how it is very much you and the page most of the time. Yeah. So I guess the internet and sort of social media has made that you can reach out to other people.
Social media, Twitter has been absolutely fantastic. I know it seems to have kind of gone off now, and it's difficult since Elon took over.
Yeah.
But it's been fantastic for a lot of authors. They've made such good friends and groups and all that kind of thing. So I think nobody's quite sure what's going to replace it.
No, it's a bit of a dilemma at the moment, because I know as a blogger, I've sort of stopped using it as much as I used to. I am still on there, but I tend to use Instagram and Threads, but I don't think that sort of has taken off the way that
I haven't. I mean, I've been on Threads, but I haven't quite got the hang of it. I'm not quite sure what it is yet. With Twitter, you've got your connections, you have your conversations, you know how to behave on it.
Yeah,
what's wanted. I'm not sure whether Threads is trying to be the same thing, or whether it's something completely different.
I think it's probably trying to be the same thing, but not really succeeding yet.
But slowly, I think it will, because I think Twitter X just doesn't. It's just not the place it was. I like Instagram.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think Instagram is much more visual, isn't it? Though
it's not so conversational, and I think we all need conversations. And part of, although I needed to research something, and I spotted an author talking about it on Instagram. With him, and so that was a conversation. So it does happen, but.
Yeah, I imagine it will, because I think more and more people are moving away from it. So people will still, the people like book Twitter, they used to call it,
Yeah.
whether it's, I think that will end up somewhere because people will want it. They just didn't like the sort of environment that it had become. So I think it will happen. And I think it's, you know, especially for book, you know, publication, book promotion, you know, people really want that because, you know, most of us get our, you know, most people get their sort of recommendations and seeing the books, I think, for the first time on social media.
And engaging with readers is really good. And often there's somebody out there who can help you with things.
Yeah.
Things, and you know, I really loved Twitter. I was being on it in 2011. I went on it.
I think I was about the same.
And yeah, it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, for our group, we've kind of made our friends and done that, but people coming through, there does need to be something else, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I've been on there since probably the same, and it's definitely where I get my most engagement. But it's it's a challenge, and I think like today, you know, there's it's a huge publication day today, isn't it? Your book's sort of going into the.
I didn't realise until last week it was the Super Thursday thing.
I thought that was in September normally. They've must have moved it close to Christmas, because I think it was always like the first week in September. So yeah.
So
I mean, I guess it's a good thing and a bad thing.
I think Boris Johnson got one out today.
Yeah, I saw it in
Tesco. A lot of people. I think it's across the board. It's non-fiction, memoirs, novels. It's a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it matters or not really. If you know, it doesn't matter what time of the year you bring your book out. You still got to kind of wave it around. And
yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, we always like to have people on to sort of talk about their books, you know, and I think sort of, you know, speaking to an author in sort of person, whether it's, you know, in real life or like this online, is a really good way of sort of being able to promote that and, you know, explain a bit more, because I think it's always nice hearing it from you, why you wrote it and what, you know, what the characters mean to you and all that type of thing. So it makes it more personal.
Yeah, I like the nice thing about psychological suspense is you're writing about what's going on in people's brains quite deeply, and
Yeah.
it's all about it's a sort of anti-Midsummer Murder thing where nobody seems to care when somebody dies. I mean, they're all very good, but they don't. Somebody's daughter's murdered, and mothers tend to just brush it off.
Yeah.
So kind of, it's more like, I think the first thing I watched that wasn't like that, where people actually cared, was The Killing. How
Yes.
years ago that was, and suddenly people seem, you know, it was completely different. With sort of skipping through the meadows in Midsummer Murders, just been crushed by a tractor or some other bizarre.
Or a piece of cheese. I was saying about that today.
From EastEnders under the piece of cheese.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's lovely. You have to really get into emotions, and it's made me think actually a lot more about, you know, the way people feel about things, and the way I've become more empathetic, I think, writing books rather than more cynical and hardened. Because you really do. I did one that was involved somebody who's an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and researching that and how ex-Jehovah's Witnesses felt, and talking to one, and it's just, you get into a whole different world of, and it's so extraordinary. People's lives are so extraordinary, and the way they respond to things. It's just, I find it absolutely fascinating. I find people fascinating.
I think we all do, because I think that's why we all love the psychological thrillers and why we love crime. And I mean, I think crime is
story.
Yeah. As I say, yeah, sorry.
Party, and this chap asked me what I did and what I wrote. So I said, and he said, "Oh, I don't know anything about that sort of thing, psychological problems, psychological thing." And then he started telling me all about his daughter's horrible controlling boyfriend. I thought, like, okay, actually,
you're like, oh, okay, you're taking some notes.
And it is, everybody has got some kind of story to tell, and it's always worth talking to people at parties, because either they know exactly what your book's about and they've got something they can contribute, or they give you an idea. Not that you everybody's problems wholesale. That people are so surprising when you dig deeper and you ask them about themselves.
Is there any other type of crime that you'd like to write? Are you quite happy in your genre, or is there anywhere you'd like to go?
I mean, the whole cozy crime thing, I think, is very good because it's just another type of crime and something for everybody. But I think the reason I struggled to get published before was because I wanted to write romance, and I'm not the right voice for that. In the same way, I don't think I'd be the right voice for cozy crime.
Yeah.
So I think I love my children and we have lots of hugs, but I don't think I'm a naturally cozy person.
No, I think it's finding your sort of place as well, isn't it? Your niche. And if you're really good at, and you enjoy and you're good at writing that, I guess some people do like to sort of experiment and try different things, but actually if you're happy where you are, and why change?
You write romance and psychological suspense and cozy crime, and I do not know how they do it. And they have children as well.
I know. Some may have small children and do it, and I never know how that happens.
They're extraordinary, and all power to them.
I was lucky if I brushed my hair when mine were little.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have a writing career, and I do think it's a challenge. When I've spoken to people who have got, it's not easy, and it's trying to find that time. It's a lot easier to write when you're, they've gone, isn't it? And you've got that space.
Well, you've got their bedrooms that have been turned into spare rooms and
like mine, and full of books.
Son's bedroom. It was my son's bedroom. It's not anymore.
Sort of with the we've talked at the beginning about sort of flawed characters. Is that fun? Do you enjoy writing those sort of, because I felt in this book that I didn't know who to trust. I had a sort of underlying feeling of, and I think you did that really well, of like, you don't know all the way through of who, is this person a good person? Are they not a good person? Are they really what you think they are, or are they something else? Is that sort of seemed I really liked reading it. So was it fun to write it?
Yes, it is. I think that's the best type of thing to write with people just don't quite know. So long as it's convincing and it's not the reader thinks that you don't understand your own characters. It's just that it's getting human nature, isn't it, for each one?
Because there's some real, like, I put in my review today when I was writing it, there's some real like mouth open wide bits in this book where I was just like, what? And I love that.
Well, I don't believe you, but
no, not what I don't believe you. What is that? Where did that come from? Who? Yeah. I liked that. I like being surprised.
I did my job then.
Yes, you did do your job very well. Do you do they surprise you? Because I was surprised with, I can't say what it was particularly, but you probably know what I'm talking about. There was one bit in the book where I was very surprised, and just interesting is does the book surprise you sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes when I read back, I think, oh, good. I've got the right, but to be honest, by the time you've been through it umpteen times,
so many times, yeah,
it's just, if somebody says something like you have to me, I'm just so pleased, and grateful. And because by that I tend to not have forgotten what happened, because you're so deeply in the next book you're writing, and you've read your other ones so many times that you almost don't see the words. So it's really lovely to hear that has worked.
I I always find that really fascinating that that you've all, because I think about my work, and it's not writing books or anything, but I think about how things go, like something that's really busy and you're working on, and then all of a sudden that thing goes into the background, and then a few weeks later you might get pulled back into it to do something else, and you think, oh, I can't remember doing all, and I know exactly what you mean by that sort of. And it must be really difficult, because then you've got to come back to it to promote it and do things like this. So, but you're already immersed in something else, so that must be quite a challenge.
You're usually immersed in, because I've just delivered. So I've got the Commuter that's I'm promoting, the one that I've just delivered, and I'm also having to figure out a new one to pitch to my editor. So you've got kind of 3 books. That's why somebody mentioned something about a particular character, and you think, oh my God, what?
Who?
Which book are they talking about? So yes, because I think people assume that you've got it all in your head, all the time, but you haven't, because you tend to be, if you write commercial fiction, you are not on a hamster wheel. It's much nicer than that, but the expectation is you'll produce a book a year at a certain time of year, and by the time you've done 7 or 8 books, you know how you work, you know how long first draft takes, you know roughly how long the edits you need for the edits, so you kind of work within that. And occasionally something, life comes and life happens, but generally you are on to the next book, and if you haven't written it by the time the one before is coming out, you tend to be in a bit of trouble and you get panicky. So I think editors like to have the next one by the time the one that's coming out comes out, and they feel safe. They've got at least 6 months. They can do it whatever they want to do, take an axe to it, and
because I think that's that sort of that pressure as well. I guess when you write and you said it, it took you a little while to get published, which it happens to a lot of people. There, it's very rare that you do have, there are people that have the sort of fairy tale where they're picked up and they're in but it's not common, really. It's more common to be in the sort of situation where you were, where you submit several things and you get rejected, and then you have to sort of pick yourself up and put that back on again. But
I meet more people who've got in with a first novel and than I do people like me who've had a whole file full of paper a wall with rejection, paper the whole house with rejection. And I feel like I'm in the minority.
I don't think you are, because not from talking to people, on here.
Maybe they just tell me they did it overnight, like Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel.
I think there's lots of people who, lots of people who've like written, have got sort of 7 or 8 books in the drawer, and they'll never see the light of day.
That's very reassuring.
But I think it's a challenge, isn't it, to sort of get that out there and have that resilience to, I think it's admirable to have that resilience that you haven't just gone, well, I'll go and do something else. And I think that's sort of generally people who are like you, they are very resilient, and they have just carried on going, and then it happens like you do, and then you 8 books later, you're still going.
Yeah. No, I'm very pleased I finally cracked it.
So what plans have you got? So we were talking, you'd had a lovely publication day. Have you got any sort of events sort of lined up, anything at the other interviews?
Not immediately. I'm taking my elderly parents to Vienna to 90th birthday party this weekend, and I literally cannot think that I'm so stressed out. I can't think beyond Monday when I get back to Heathrow. I've got bits and pieces, nothing huge. I'm just going to focus on writing the next book. I mean, fingers crossed the one I've submitted will be approved, and then writing the next book. I'm trying to kind of minimize the stressful thing. There's been a year of big family events. It's been a stressful year, actually. Weddings, babies, house moves, elderly parents needing more care, that I've just kind of taken a little step back. And doing this today is really nice. I didn't, because of what this year, decided not to do a book launch with all the champagne and friends and things. So I just thought I'd just do this on the day. So I've had tea with writer friends, I've had lunch with my agent and publisher, and I've got this, and after this I can a glass of wine, put my feet up and watch TV.
I say we could have had, I've got a glass of water, we could have had pretend champagne.
Well, I thought about bringing a glass of wine up with me, and I thought that might look a bit desperate.
No, we're very very open-minded. You can always have it in a cup, when nobody knows what you're drinking.
Large vodka.
So what did you? What are you a big reader yourself? Are you?
Yeah, no, I'm a huge reader, and I always have been. And it's so that I think a lot of people who say as children they read, they were continually immersed in a book. I think there's usually quite a good reason for that. It's, if you're I was quite socially isolated as a child, so I just read and read and read. And I talk to other people who say they read all the time. And if you dig deeper, you quite often find there's a reason they were burnt out with their mates. They were immersed in Jane Eyre, whatever it is. So I read a huge amount, especially in my teens. And way back then, I don't know other people, but the 70s, there wasn't so much kind of the young adult thing. You tended to go from Lion, Witch and Wardrobe to the Brontes. There wasn't a sort of in between. So there was from that to Wuthering Heights. And my mother was great. She had walls and walls of books. And we were just allowed to just read whatever we wanted. It's like having a library at home. And I've got walls of books. I think they make the best decoration.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, no, I always read, and I still do. And now, when you write, you get sent an awful lot of books in your own genre to read and learn, which I do, and I'm really happy to, and I'm always very flattered. But I've tried this year to read just actually some books that I've read before, just books that used to be my comfort that I absolutely loved, because they do mold you, especially when you're young reading them. I've reread a few things, and I've also read things that I'm just curious about, just that I've never read. I've just read Jaws.
Oh really? Yeah, I've never read the book. I've seen it in charity shops a lot.
I just just why not? And the other things I've been reading are books that in the black and white films time, 30s, 40s, were turned into films, like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Oh yeah.
Stepford Wives. And that's really interesting because those books back then were a lot shorter.
Yeah, they're only like little. Stepford Wives is really thick.
Nothing gets cut in the films. Nothing needs to be cut. So it's like reading the films, and it's very interesting kind of deconstructing those and looking at why they were made into films and why that worked. And they're just really good stories, actually.
It's interesting you said about Brontes, because that was definitely my transition was definitely, because I was sort of born in the 70s, and sort of the 80s was, so I went from sort of Enid Blyton and St. Clair's and Naughtiest Girl to sort of Agatha Christie and Virginia Andrews, which was a really dark book. But I read that when I was about 12, I think. But I was the same. I was allowed to read pretty much what I wanted. But I think it's interesting how it's changed so much, because there's genres of young adult books now in across everything. So it's very different. But I think
it's good in a way, because I think that with kids with so many other distractions, this is actually bringing them to reading. I know that there's all these series that draw them in. And there's a 15-year-old that I mentor for creative writing, and she'll get a series and she would devour the entire lot. Yeah. So it's not what I did or what I want to read.
No.
I did read Twilight, and I read The Hunger Games, and I thought they were absolutely brilliant. But but all the other stuff, the fantasy stuff, I'm not. But I can see that they just want to read, and that's better than not reading. And some of them are really, really good. And
yeah. I am. So Sarah on the chat is saying, "Are you taking a book to Vienna?" I'm not sure you'll have time with but
I don't know. I think maybe I'll buy one at the airport.
Yeah, I'm sure yours will be at the airport. Yours is definitely an airport.
They're going into the WH Smith travel, but not. I think it's the 20th of October.
Okay.
So it will be eventually.
Yeah. It's definitely one that you would pick up, and sort of, it's got that sort of really sort of enticing cover of.
Well, I hope so. I bought a matching bag.
Oh, did you? Oh, well done.
On social media.
You can stand there next to your book with your bag.
Yeah, well, I tried that today when I went into town, but I don't think anybody noticed.
Oh. Oh, you'll have to do another. You'll have to just do it like you'll have to sort of make a big scene or something in the middle of Waterstones.
Have a swoon.
So you've mentioned a couple of times about the book that you're sort of working on. Can you sort of tell the one that the next one? Can you tell us anything about that?
It's called The Psychiatrist, which
Oh,
it's a lot of letters to fit on the front. I keep saying that.
that is actually, isn't it? Yeah, squish it up a bit more.
They like these titles with that's fine by me. I could call it a lot more things, but I'm very happy if they're happy. And it's one of those stories where a teenage girl makes an accusation, and it's the aftermath of that, and it involves a pop star, well, an ex-pop star and his family. And yeah, that's all I can say. There's a big twist. There's a twist you won't see coming.
Oh, well, I love those, so that's good.
Yeah, so there's characters. The heroine type is problematical. So it's very. I found it quite hard, this one, to do, because you do want the reader to sympathise and to root for her, even though she's done something very. I don't know if she's done something bad.
It's interesting because I must admit, when I read a crime or a thriller, like sometimes I really like it if I don't like any of the characters, because like I sort of am invested in the story, but I'm not invested in them, so I don't have any sort of preconceptions about what I want them to be. They're all really, really vile. I'm just like, I don't like any of you, but actually I don't mind what happens to any of you. So, but I quite like a redeeming feature as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think you lose people's interest.
Yeah.
So there has to be some sympathy. There has to be understanding. So that teenage girl who behaves badly, she's just very young.
Yeah. I must admit, I worked in public libraries for lots of years, and I appreciate that quite often people are unhappy, grumpy, angry because of what's happening, and you don't always know. And I always remember having to sort of say that to people is, you don't know what's going on in people's lives, so you need to be kind. I think that's important, isn't it? Because I think if you make them so loathsome, that you don't really care what happens to them, that sort of defeats the object in a way, because you want them to have I want them to have some redeeming features.
If the reader doesn't care, you lose the reader.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can't be bothered. And I never used to not finish books, but now I do, because I have to read so much more. So if I don't, it's not, like you say, it's not a question of not liking them. There has to be a grain of sympathy. There has to be something about them that draws you. So that if that isn't there, I don't tend to read on.
I think I think as you get older, I mean, I definitely have. I always used to sort of think of it as and I still know people who think of it as almost like a challenge that they've got to finish every book they start. And I'm like, no, because there's so many books in the world. Why waste time on one that you don't enjoy? Because it doesn't matter whether I'm never unkind about whether I like a book or I don't like a book, but I just don't see the point of reading it if you're not invested in it, because there's so many that I'll never get time to read.
You need to look at things. You need to look at why you like people and why you like characters. If you go into, I was thinking about it and read the beginning of Pride and Prejudice to find out why you immediately like Elizabeth Bennet.
Yeah.
And basically, after I've read it a couple of times, it's because she laughs at herself.
Yeah, she does.
That's what she has. And the other one, that Go Tell a Watchtower, the one that
the second
Harper
Lee.
My brain's not functioning. But Scout, the elder Scout, even though that book does have its problems, although I thought it was very good, you immediately like Scout. So I was reading that over again. I'd never quite pinned it down. She gets herself into a terrorist situation right at the beginning of the book, so that could be it. in a train carriage. But there are some books you read where you just immediately, you don't mind, you'll read on, you don't care what they do, because right from page 1 or 2 you just like them.
You like them, yeah.
It's a very hard thing to do, and I think some authors just do it, they don't even realize they're doing it, they just create really lovely characters. And you can't just say they work in a puppy charity.
fluffy kittens.
Or a dog.
Yeah.
There has to be something in their personality that you don't slapping the reader in the face with it, but it's there. And so whatever they do, even if they kill somebody, which usually bums me if they do, they've got to have that.
As long as they've got a nice boot for their car to go in.
Some Jaguars do.
Yeah, they do, don't they? Yeah, it's like those big cars now, isn't it? Like a Rolls Royce or a Bentley, something like that.
So they have to be very wealthy people.
Yeah, and then that sort of or maybe
that research.
Yeah.
Yeah,
my Seat Leon's got a hatchback, so that's not really. I mean, it does have a parcel shelf thing, so you could sort of, but it's not the same, is it? It's not that sort of.
Karen, you're not going to get away with it.
No, I'm not. No. We're just coming up to the end of the hour, and it's gone really quickly.
Quickly.
Just before you go, have you got anything that you'd recommend us to read that you've enjoyed lately? Are you saying you've reading it?
What have I enjoyed lately? Oh, Carol Haley's bringing a new book out called Scenes from a Tragedy, which is just brilliant, and the gaslighting that goes on is off the scale, and she's kind of bridges the genre literary gap. She's very good. She wrote a book called The Silence Project. It's her first book, so this is her second one. People always say second books are a problem, but this isn't. I absolutely love that. So I'm not quite sure when it's coming out.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. I like
From a Tragedy, Carol Haley.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, I hope you have a really enjoyable rest of your evening with your glass of wine.
Thank you.
And good luck with the Commuter. And please join us again next year when you can tell us when we can talk about the psychiatrist, because I think that sounds fantastic.
Well, thank you. It's been really nice, and thank you for having me. And I don't know who's here, but thank you for coming along and listening.
Well, we'll share it on. We also share it on our YouTube channel, so I'll share you the link so that you can share. Hopefully, it hasn't been too. I think you've been fine. The people I might be bobbing in and out, but they've come to see you anyway, so that's fine. So yeah, we'll share that as well. So thank you to everybody for watching, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you, Emma. Good luck, and see you soon. Thank you. Bye.